Well, welcome. Tonight, it's a dual message here tonight. We have an election question, and we have our normal, what have you done for Milford lately question. I'm not sure which one is more important to ask first, but we'll start with an introduction.
Hi, Al. Great to be back with you. It's always a pleasure to be here in Milford. I love coming to Milford. Come pretty often. I am State Senator Becca Rausch, and it is a real honor and privilege to represent the wonderful town of Milford in our state senate, along with 10 other municipalities: Bellingham, Franklin, Rentham, Plainville, Norfolk, Millis, Medfield, Dover, Sherburne, and Needham. I think I got them all.
So your first question you passed is, do you know all the towns you're supposed to represent?
I do. All 11. I can list them south to north, north to south. I'm pretty sure I can do it alphabetically. Reverse alphabetized is a little bit still of a challenge. But it's been a wildly successful session for our district. More than $311 million brought back into our schools. And we can talk much more about the budget and where all of our funding has been going. Also made some really significant policy investments and also being in town, right? Just being here and being in all 11 municipalities in the district and all the wonderful opportunities to engage in communities and also to provide information. Like students, for example, this term I've met with, I think it's over 1,000 students. I visit schools, they visit the State House, or all sorts of different ways for us to engage. And it's such a joy, especially as the only mom of kids 10 and under in the entirety of the Senate. It's a particular privilege to come and visit with students.
I still don't know how you do it.
I have an amazing husband and also 2 amazing kids. And in theory, maybe someday we'll train the very large dog to help with, making lunches or something like that. But so far that has not been successful. So
now, how many years has it been? It's hard to think you're coming up for election again.
Yeah, it's been the better part of a decade already that I've been serving in the state senate in Massachusetts, and it's just an incredible privilege to be able to serve in this way and do some good in the world. Like meeting with students, for example, and showing them that your elected officials are real people, right? Real people that you can talk to and have dogs and kids, and it's just like their families. And we, I have a sort of presentation that I give to students all the time, and involves a government tic-tac-toe board, right? How all the levels of government work and which pieces of people fall into which categories, and what all of our respective jobs are, and how they all work together to provide good outcomes for people and communities. And that's always really fun and engaging, and and it's part and parcel of the breadth of work that I do, right? Providing information and access to government. And also part of my budgetary work over this session in particular, I picked up the helm of championing civics education funding that was previously led by our former Senate President, Harriet Chandler from Worcester. And she retired at the end of last term, and I was so honored to try to fill those immensely big shoes. But we've been able, over this term alone, to pour $5 million into civics education. And that is essential funding.
That's got to be an honor. I mean, you think of that post going mainly to large city representatives.
To become Senate President? She actually...
Well, even to assume the chair that she had.
I mean, the current Senate President is from Ashland, so that's not a big city.
No, I wasn't thinking of that. I was thinking of budget and the control. When you say she's from Worcester.
Yep, she was Senate President actually for a fairly limited amount of time, between the one before her and the current Senate President, Karen Spilka, who again is from Ashland. Before her, the Senate President was from Western Mass, actually. And our Chair of Ways and Means is from the town of Westport down in the South Coast. So I don't think those leadership positions in the Senate are really, by geography, right?
No, it always just seemed that the influence from the big cities was heavy. But I guess I'm wrong.
That hasn't been my experience in the Senate. Like I said, I've been in the Senate now the better part of a decade. And in fact, that's a big part of my service, right? I represent a swath of the state that can get forgotten without a very effective advocate, right? So Metro West and South Central Massachusetts, right? We're in kind of South Central Massachusetts right now as we record this.
Except when
this
it comes
interview.
down to taxes on the highway. Then they remember Metro West.
Yep. There are plenty of highways around here that have no tolls.
No, I'm just thinking of the Mass Pike.
Sure.
How much money is raised outside of 128?
Yeah, there is a conversation, an ongoing conversation about that. That's for sure. But I will say, I think part of my measure of success in the Senate, serving this area, this region, is about elevating the awareness about this region, right? Lots of smaller towns, mid-sized towns, even some larger towns that are not a big city and also have a very unique set of needs that in the grand scheme, the sort of topic areas are all kind of similar, right? Healthcare, education, housing, transportation. But the way those issues kind of manifest is different in our region than it is in Boston or Worcester even, let alone Western Mass or the coasts or any of those.
So let me start with our typical candidate question.
Sure.
Beck, I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
Because I have been providing stellar service for the last 6 years, because I am the candidate in this race with experience and expertise and dedication, and the proof is in the pudding of my track record, not only passing multiple dozens of pieces of legislation that uplift people's lives and make their lives better, and also support our communities, but also delivering hundreds of millions of dollars into our communities for our schools, for special initiatives, for community celebrations, for special projects. And so on every measure, my team and I have been delivering real results that make a meaningful, positive difference for our people, for our families, for our small business owners, and for our communities. And so I very much look forward to continuing that service and community connection in the years to come in the state Senate.
We cannot forget that a couple years ago, 2 years in a row, you delivered $7 million of incremental school financing or school assistance.
Yeah, we are in year 5, I think, of a 7-year rollout to implement the Student Opportunity Act. This is groundbreaking, game-changing legislation that we passed my very first year in the state Senate to update our school funding formulas. And so we have done that. I think there's still additional work to do. Some of our schools in particular are facing a significant increase in the cost of special education, for example. So there's additional work to be done there. And I'm a member of the education committee. So I'm having conversations about those pieces that still need to be done. But we're in year 5 of that 7-year rollout from the Student Opportunity Act of 2019, where we're continually increasing our investments in our public schools. So this term alone, our funding for schools in our district topped $311 million across the district, and that's significant. And that doesn't include the $5 million for civics education that's statewide, the many millions of dollars that we put into the Genocide Education Trust Fund in this year's budget, and so all of these kind of additional pots of money that come into the schools.
Well, saving our local tax base when you announced that we got an incremental $7 million 2 years in a row.
It's a big deal. It matters. And I think it's what people are looking for when they consider their options, right? Do you want someone who's going to complain about the problems, or do you want someone who's going to actually provide meaningful solutions and helpful steps forward to the issues that our communities are facing, and making sure that we invest in public schools, invest in our youth, invest in education, and invest in other aspects of people's daily lives. And education is certainly part of that. Those are the solutions I think that people are looking for. And actually, this term, my colleagues and I in the legislature also made a historic investment in early education and care, which the prices have just been, sky high. We still have a workforce problem because the pay is still relatively low, and so we have to invest in that sector in order to generate the outcomes that we're looking for, right? Better paid staff and also more accessible and affordable early ed and care, EEC. So our state budget this year actually invests more than $1.5 billion in the early education and care sector.
Now, when you say early education,
that's early eds can start as young as just a few weeks old, really, right? It's previously referred to as childcare,
right?
daycare, early education. There is curriculum actually, even starting in those infant rooms, that goes all the way up zero to age 5, and there are certain pieces, right, of that curriculum that come out every year and get taught to our youngest.
I remembered reading
our youngest residents.
that the kids who went through pre-K, K did better.
Yeah, there is data to show that. Yep, and also data indicates that, and many studies actually show that we learn the overwhelming majority of our empathy, for example, before the age of 5.
Oh,
Right?
really?
Isn't that fascinating? I thought that was so interesting. And as a parent, mom, I think that's really true. Just in my own anecdotal experience, just watching and engaging with my kids as they grow up and helping them learn and grow and develop. Yeah, I think most of those empathy skills were kind of set by the time they even entered kindergarten.
Well, I'm always surprised, or I shouldn't be, at how little we actually know about our school systems as parents.
Oh, really?
Because I for one, was surprised when I found out over 50% of Milford High School kids qualify for free lunch.
Yeah.
Not that they don't get it anyway,
Sure.
but
Right. Well, that's the reason that those questions still get asked is because it impacts the federal dollars that we're able to get back. But during the pandemic period of COVID, the federal government provided dollars to feed everybody, right? Universal school breakfast and lunch. And that was tremendous. And we in the Massachusetts legislature, my colleagues and I, saw the kind of positive impacts that was having, not just on feeding people, which is, of course, massively important, but also on reducing the stigma and shame that has come for students, lower income students, students without financial
when we
resources.
were kids, a lot of kids didn't want to get up in the line with the...
Exactly, right? Because they felt ashamed of it. And when it's just free for everybody, it doesn't matter because
Right.
everybody just goes through. And so kids are eating, right? Kids can't learn on an empty stomach. I mean, I don't know about you, I can't work on an empty stomach very effectively either, right? See, with coffee, right? Hopefully you've had some breakfast, right? I'm going to get some lunch after this. Right? We need to eat, right? We need to fuel our bodies in order to be able to function. And so when the federal dollars for universal school meals went away, and they just stopped, my colleagues and I said, no way, we're not going to stop this program. We are going to continue to invest in this program, and we have done so every single year. So the question still gets asked on the back end of, parent and caregiver forms that you fill out for school every year, so that we can recoup those federal dollars coming in, but the state covers, and it is a priority of mine every year when we take a look at the budget, we fully fund universal school meals across the whole state.
Well, I can't think of any logical reason not to.
I mean, people have their, stated concerns, but I think the benefits far outweigh those concerns. And we're also, investing dollars in our youth in a number of other ways as well. And I'm proud to champion a number of those ways and lead those efforts. For example, youth mental health has been also something that really had a spotlight shown on it during the pandemic period. And in 2021, I had a virtual town hall, the first of now many virtual youth town halls. In fact, I have another one tonight, as fate would have it. And we met with, I turned to my staff and I said, we got to talk to young people because this pandemic is impacting them in ways that we as adults can't really understand. We need to hear from them. So we did, right? We set up a Zoom and young people came, which was zoomed in. I mean, not physically, of course, right? But they zoomed in from wherever they were in the district, and they spoke very clearly and bravely about how they needed different and better mental health supports. And we got to work immediately. And within just a few weeks, which in legislative time is incredibly short, I had secured $250,000 to pilot a youth mental health support text line. And the text line is called Hey Sam, and it was so amazingly successful in literally saving lives.
I remember years ago you were excited about the results of that.
Yeah, I'm still excited about the results of that because the reach continues to grow, the support continues to pour out, and I have championed that every single year, and we continue to fund it with youth mental health. The Hey Sam text line and overall suicide prevention services provided by Samaritans is now funded at $1.8 million in our state budget. And it's not just benefiting the young people who are texting in, right? And just for those people who are watching, it's completely free. It is totally anonymous. It is confidential, and it's peer-to-peer, right? And that peer-to-peer part is really novel and groundbreaking, right? And there's just an aspect of being a young person in today's world that you and I, Al, are never going to understand, right? Because we're not young people in today's world, right? And so that peer-to-peer aspect, they're trained and supervised by appropriately trained professionals, but these trained volunteers are connecting with your peers. So you can text in, if you're feeling stressed about a test or a fight with your parent or whatever, all the way up to feeling suicidal. You can text Hey Sam, and somebody, a peer, right, another trained young person is going to be on the other line, on the other end of that text thread, to respond, to listen, and to help you. And it's been actually massively helpful, life-saving in many cases, not just for the people who are texting in, but also for the teens who are volunteering, right, and providing services to their
Well,
to their
that
peers.
peer-to-peer, that perspective is got to be invaluable. I'm not in the target age bracket, but both from the data and also at the anecdotal stories I hear, both from people who have texted in and also from people who are working on the text line and volunteering on the text line, it is entirely But
true.
perspective, it's like your perspective being a mother of young children, a working mother of young children,
Yeah.
has to be so different from the rest of your colleagues.
It adds different perspective. It adds different perspective, and that different perspective has yielded positive outcomes for other working moms of young kids all across the state. And that is really kind of incredible and massively humbling. In fact, I just got chills even saying it out loud. It's really, what a phenomenal thing. So thank you to the voters who have sent me to the State House so many years now to do this great work.
And if you're not involved, it's got to be hard to understand, because I remember when my darling bride and I were working, and we were working together. We had a 1-year-old, had her in daycare, found a wonderful ex-teacher.
Mm-hmm.
But it was $1 a minute penalty.
Yeah, it gets pricey.
And you're saying, that's an incentive, but the biggest incentive was if you were consistently late, she dumped you.
Yeah, you lost your spot.
And then trying to find another spot.
It's incredibly difficult. But I'm really thrilled, actually, that just in the last month, I think, 2 new daycares have opened in this region, both of which are in Franklin. But, they're around, right? These small businesses are popping up. And that's also one of the greatest parts of my job is showing up in schools to support small businesses, right? All sorts of things that in community, right? I'm having 8 town halls just this term alone. I've had nearly 100 personalized individual constituent conversations in office hours. We've communicated by email with nearly 11,000 constituents. It's awesome. It's just awesome.
You have a home?
Sometimes.
I was going to say, before the show, we talked about how we have our town meeting tonight. And you said, yes, you have 5 of them.
Yeah, I think that's the count. 5 or 6 are all happening this evening. That's the beauty of local government is And with deep gratitude to all of our partners in local government, including here in Milford and also the 10 other towns that I represent, right? This is where the rubber meets the road, as the saying goes.
Now, you're heavily involved in new legislation about maternal offerings.
Yeah, the legislation actually is not new, but the law is new. So this was a massive victory. So let's go back, right? In my first term, I filed 2 bills. I filed several bills, but 2 in particular that I'm going to talk about. One, to create a commission on racial inequities in maternal health. And it is still true even now, right, all these years later, that maternal health outcomes are more than 2.5 times worse for Black women than they are for white women. That is unacceptable.
Help me understand. That makes no sense.
That is.
I'm not challenging you.
No, I hear you, and I understand your response to that because I've seen it before. But that is the fact, right? That is the fact of it. That is what the data consistently shows. And that is an unacceptable rate, right? And also, frankly, our maternal health outcomes, a study from the Department of Public Health came out last year showing that the maternal health outcomes are actually getting a little bit worse overall when they should be getting better, right? Now, you think it's bad here in Massachusetts. In Florida, the disparity, those racial disparities, is 8 times worse for Black women than it is for white women. The national average is around.
Is that
4.
because of prenatal care, or is there a cause?
That is the effect of systemic racism, and we cannot accept that. I cannot accept that, and I'm grateful to work with
And again,
colleagues
pardon
who
me
also
for being
cannot accept
naive, but medical care, when you go to the emergency room or to Milford Medical Center, I didn't think they asked what color, what size, what shape you are.
I mean, I'm not in the hospital on a daily basis. All I can tell you is what the data says and what the Special Commission's report showed. So that first term, I filed the legislation with colleagues in the House to create the commission in the first place, right? We knew we had this problem. We said we got to figure out how to address this problem in a comprehensive, meaningful, results-driven way. And that commission was really quite formidable, and the report that came out also is quite formidable. You can download it online, excuse me. And the other bill, so that became law, my first term. The other bill was my bill to create a path for licensure for certified professional midwives. These are the midwives that provide care in birth centers, in people's houses, right? Basically, if you want to have a baby and you don't want to do it in the hospital, you're looking for a certified professional midwife. And until very recently, 38 states in the nation provided a path to licensure for CPMs, for these out-of-hospital care midwives, but not Massachusetts. So in my first term, the Senate actually unanimously passed both bills, the commission bill and the midwifery licensure bill. The commission bill made it all the way to the end and became law, and the commission got stood up. The midwifery bill, unfortunately, didn't quite make it over the ultimate passed into law finish line that term, but we had made really significant strides, and again, the Senate passed it unanimously. So the commission got to work, and lo and behold, when the report came out, licensing certified professional midwives was one of their top 6 recommended actions to address racial disparities in Massachusetts maternal health care. And so this term, I'm absolutely thrilled to say, in August, the governor signed into law a comprehensive midwifery and maternal health package. It included the licensure piece for certified professional midwives, and actually 3 other pieces of legislation that I've been working on this session. One about pediatric care, right? Because it's not just about before the babies come out. You have to also take care of them after the babies come out, right? And I don't know if you remember trying to take or as you're seeing your grandkids, try to get to the pediatrician. Sometimes it can be a real challenge, and a global deadly pandemic in the middle of things sort of threw everybody's schedules off. So certain insurance companies have been paying for well-child, annual pediatric visits, right? Your physical, basically. once per 12 months, right? Once every 12 months, which is really 12 months plus 1 day, right? Because you can't go until
Right.
you've got. So you just get later and later and later every time, right? And farther away from your kid's birthday. Other insurance companies provide pediatric physical coverage once per calendar year. Same amount of money for the insurance companies, or it doesn't change their bottom line at all. But it does drastically change the ease with which parents and caregivers can actually get their kids to the pediatrician. So I wrote a bill, right? Because I've experienced this problem too, right? Talk about a different perspective. I've experienced this problem as well. I've heard from plenty of my, fellow parents about the challenges and, needing to get their kids in, but they can't because it's not quite been 12 months yet. So what a mess, right? So I wrote a bill to just require that everyone follow the same once per calendar year schedule. That was also part of this bill that Governor Healy signed into law in August. In addition to these two other pieces, there are many pieces in this bill, right? These are just the pieces that I particularly worked on and led on. The third piece is to provide a more comprehensive look at post-pregnancy mental health. Usually postpartum, until now, postpartum depression screenings have been happening at a pediatrician's office. But guess what? We all know not all pregnancies result in babies. I have actually lost count of the number of people who have shared their stories of miscarriages with me. And it's heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking. And those people need to be screened too for mental health needs. So now, by Massachusetts law that was signed in August by Governor Healy, all post-pregnancy patients will be screened at all sites of care, not just at a pediatric office, but also at an OB's office or any place that is providing care for that post-pregnant patient. And the fourth piece is about combating what are known as anti-choice, anti-abortion, so-called crisis pregnancy centers. These are unlicensed, generally speaking, unlicensed facilities that kind of masquerade as healthcare clinics. They use the same pink as Planned Parenthood. They locate themselves next to the legitimate reproductive care clinics, right? Sometimes right next door, even. And these anti-choice crisis pregnancy centers actually outnumber legitimate reproductive care clinics in Massachusetts by more than double, right? So this is a problem that we have here. And one of the ways that these anti-choice centers kind of lure in women seeking abortion care, and they definitely do not provide abortion care, is by offering a free ultrasound. And actually, in a recent case, an ultrasound that was provided at one of these anti-choice centers was misread and led to a very serious health situation for the woman who was pregnant. It was not a viable pregnancy. It was an ectopic pregnancy.
I don't have to be licensed to put a shingle out that says health care provided here?
So it gets tricky.
It seems amazing to me that I could open up Al's Taco Barn and Healthcare Center, and nobody's going to come in and say, "Are you qualified? Are you trained?"
Yeah, the specific words. There are certain words that people can use and certain words that people can't use. Right? You can't practice medicine without a license, but they're not practicing medicine, right? They're not licensed, and that's exactly the thing. But they've been using ultrasounds.
Wait a minute, I give you an ultrasound,
Mm-hmm.
and I represent a medical opinion as to what that ultrasound means.
So herein lies the rub, Al, right? Because the performance of the ultrasound is, right, with the wand and everything, right? The goo, hopefully it's warm, is not the same as reading it, right? And we have wonderful ultrasound technicians all throughout the state who conduct those ultrasounds. And at legitimate care centers, those wonderful technicians work in collaboration with and under the supervision of a licensed provider. That is not the case at a significant number of these anti-choice centers, right? Because there are no licensed providers there. So I got to thinking, and I did a lot of collaboration and research on this, and I wrote a piece of law that is in fact now law that requires that all ultrasounds relating to a pregnancy or even a possible pregnancy must be conducted under the supervision of a licensed provider. And so we, those are just for, right, the licensing of midwives, the pediatric access, the, really.
I'm sorry, it's just the way you
Patient
say it,
protection.
you feel like saying, duh.
Yeah. But but now it is law, right? For the patient protection piece for the ultrasound components, and also the kind of comprehensive and more holistic appreciation and recognition of all the different types of the ways that pregnancies end, and making sure that we're taking care of all post-pregnancy patients from a mental health perspective. So that's just one bill, right? I mean, that's 4 different bills that got packaged up into one package. And that's a huge deal. And so all those pieces are now law. And it was, what an incredible day it was at the State House. when
Does
the
it
governor
have
signed
an
that bill.
effect on these unlicensed centers?
It will. It will. Right, it became law in August, so we're
Okay,
going to
so
start to
it's-
see those impacts come through over the next several months.
Because I would like to know if the person that's giving me medical advice is trained, is certified. And you're telling me that I could walk in, not me, but a person could walk into a center and have no clue.
Yeah, that's the case. And so there's a real patient protection aspect to this. There's a consumer protection aspect of this work. Honestly, it's yet another piece in the work that my colleagues and I are doing to ensure that regardless of what is happening and has already happened at the national level with regard to reproductive rights and abortion access, that here in Massachusetts, we are protecting, safeguarding, and uplifting those rights.
Well, it just seems like regardless of what your choice is, it should be a safe choice either way.
I agree.
And, just like with the midwives, when you said they weren't licensed, I get a chill up my spine saying, how is that possible?
Yeah, well, Massachusetts is now the 39th state in the nation to offer licensure for certified professional midwives.
But it
and it's
amazes me,
fantastic.
38 states ahead of us?
Yeah, I know. We don't like to be that far behind, so I'm glad that we've now taken care of
Normally
it.
when it comes to issues like this, you're proud that we're cutting edge.
Yeah, we were not cutting edge on this one. But we're here now, and that is what matters. And I'm so proud to have led that particular legislative effort in the Senate, to have worked with my colleagues in the House to get that bill across the finish line finally. That's a huge step forward. And, the really interesting part about all this is that, no surprise, during the COVID pandemic, the demand for home birth care, midwifery care, skyrocketed, right? Went way high, no shock, right? Middle of a pandemic, people didn't want to go to a hospital, people didn't want to add additional work to the folks who were already
Or risk.
drastically overburdened in hospitals, right? Okay, fine. So that made a lot of sense. The really interesting part is that after the pandemic period kind of waned,
Did it go down?
it didn't go down at all. The demand stayed right at that same level. And so we know that this is something that people want, right? And licensure is important for a whole host of reasons. And so now we have it.
Do we know why the trend stays high for people wanting to have home births?
I think there are a variety of reasons. I think people like to have options and like to be able to make those choices for themselves. And we have seen, and this is why it was part of the Racial Inequities Commission report, data indicates that midwifery care and doula care is much more patient-centered and patient-focused, particularly for women of color.
So it's not economic driven?
Well, the licensure piece is actually significant when it comes to the economics of it, because to pay for a home birth without licensure, the only way to cover the cost of home birth midwifery care is out of pocket, and that can cost $8,000 to $10,000 every time. I don't know about you. I don't have an extra 10 grand lying around. That's a lot of money. That's out of reach for most people. With licensure, Mass Health will kick in.
Oh,
And,
okay.
right, and you can have some other, some financial coverage, right, for those services. So that's a huge part of my work, and continues to be a huge part of my work as we look ahead to the term to come, and really fits within this kind of grand scheme of the work that I do, right? Supporting families, uplifting families, and healthcare broadly, right? And particularly salient to this region, really the whole state, is the cost of healthcare overall, right? Certainly including, but not at all limited to maternal healthcare. And we already talked a little bit about mental health care, right? So all these different pieces, right? I had 2 bills that the Senate passed also as part of a comprehensive package to better keep tabs on and control the healthcare cost growth in the state.
God bless.
Right? People can't afford it. It's that simple. People can't afford it. So how are we going to better contain the growth of healthcare costs? And the Senate passed a pretty significant healthcare cost containment and oversight package earlier this term. The House passed a similar but slightly different bill, and so those differences haven't yet been worked out. I hope they will be in short order. So we've made some progress on that front as well, in addition to supporting our small businesses. And in fact, I just came from a meeting of my Small Business Advisory Council just a couple towns over, and I was honored to have that as an open meeting. That Senate Ways and Means Chair Michael Rodrigues came and spoke to everyone, both regional chamber representatives and executive directors and business professionals and all sorts of folks, local government partners were all there. And we heard directly from the Chair Ways and Means himself, right, talking about the fiscal state of the Commonwealth, which he said we were in good shape, so glad to report that. And also to just engage in a back and forth about, what's it like for small business owners right now, and how can we continue to provide support. Some of that was about healthcare. Some of that was about workforce. Some of it was about housing. Some of it was about, steward, right? And so we've got all these pieces, and they all fit together.
Well, it sounds like you took a lot of good forward progress on taking care of our babies, taking care of our moms. You brought up the economy.
Yep.
What's going on with taking care of people without children?
Yeah. We actually also passed a long-term care bill that is now signed into law to better provide safety for people in long-term care facilities and their families, and also the workers in that workforce. I continue to work with our councils on aging and other folks in that particular genre and sort of sector to ensure that we continue to provide great community supports for people.
So how are we doing overall on our budget, our economy of Massachusetts?
Yeah, so Chair Ways and Means says we're in a good fiscal state, so I love hearing that from my good friend Chair Rodrigues. The current fiscal year, we're in fiscal year 25. I know we're calendar year 24 still, right? But the state's fiscal year is July 1st to June 30th, so we're already into fiscal 25. The budget this year was $58 billion, right? That's billion with a B, $58 billion. And as I mentioned earlier in our chat today, right, more than $311 million of those $58 billion went into the schools in our Senate district, plus $5 million for civics education and many more into maternal health and women's history. And education is a huge component of the budget every year. Healthcare is about 40-ish% of the budget every year. Transportation is a part of it. There's even a separate transportation bill that we do, a bond bill that provides even additional funding into communities. So we've got a lot of really good pieces, huge investments, as I mentioned, in early education and care, and also in higher education. We've made significant strides on making higher education much more affordable for people. In fact, a lot of people now can go to community college pretty much free, as far as tuition is concerned, free. Right, you can get a free community college education here in Massachusetts, and that is terrific access.
Well, that's incredible because people are realizing that they can go 2 years to a community college, even if it wasn't free.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I look at the schools around, the BUs, the BCs, the Holy Crosses, the Harvard, it's $90,000 a year.
Oh my gosh, it makes me like shiver.
I mean, somebody like you looking up at $180,000 to put 2 kids through college
Oh,
a
yeah.
year.
Our kids are 10 and 8. It's coming. It's coming soon.
I don't even know. I mean, 10 and 8, you sit there and say you got 8 years, 9 years to save up enough money.
Oh, Al, don't scare me like this. Yeah, no, I know it's coming. And that's a reality that all families in Massachusetts are facing. So we have to figure out how to invest. And by the way, that's not just about helping our students get educated and helping our families afford that. It's also about driving into the workforce, right? Early education care, for example, right? I know we keep coming back to this, but it's a great example, right? We need workers, right? And so now that we're able to kind of help, we're better able to see a path into that workforce, starting in high school, right? Starting in high school and then navigating all the way through. Right? Nursing, for example, right? If you want to go to community college and pursue a nursing degree, you can go tuition free in Massachusetts, right? If you've lived here for a year, you can go. And that's incredible because we know we need more nurses, right? And so we said, okay, we need more nurses. How are we going to do that? Well, this is one of the answers, right? And I continue to have conversations about strengthening pathways into the trades, for examples, right? Construction, carpentry, electric,
Well,
plumbing, right?
for the first time, Milford's got a chance. We've got a great VOTEC school that we're part of, Blackstone.
Yep.
But, and I've said this over and over, and it's only been recently that we got an option through the state to put some VOTEC back into Milford High.
Yeah, we were just talking about this morning with my
Because
Small Business Advisory Council.
I sat there and said, you know, I think of people, and I'll take it personally, because my father, he came to this country. You put him in an organic chemistry class, he's not going to do well.
Yeah.
But give the man a tool.
Yeah.
And he's an artist.
Yeah.
And he could provide for his family in a meaningful way.
Yeah. And there are all sorts of ways that people, you know, participate in the economy, participate in communities, and you know, we're working on strengthening all of those different
And finally, now we're told that through Chapter 74,
mm-hmm.
we can
That's right.
not compete with Blackstone Valley.
Yeah.
Because that's us.
Sure.
We're 1/13 of Blackstone Valley.
Right.
But we can add spots for the kids who aren't in the top 10, 20%
Mm-hmm.
academically of their class, but want to pursue a trade.
Yeah.
And like you say,
And give students exposure to something that maybe they hadn't thought of before, right? We had that kind of opportunity when I was a student in high school, you know, a number of years ago now, and it's, you know, it's kind of shifted away from that. Now they're kind of coming back, so that's terrific. So, you know, lots of good, and not just in Blackstone. I was just at Tri-County, right, last week for the ceremonial groundbreaking of their brand new building. Right? The existing Tri-County building is older than me. And not by a little, by a good number of years, right? So they need a new facility, right? So we got to, you know, continue to invest in education, and I'm very proud to be doing that work.
well, you know, and it's funny because people don't understand that the school system universally affects every resident.
Everybody.
Because I've heard so many times when people say, well, I don't have any kids in school anymore. I said, do you have a house? Do you not think that people...
Do you need health care?
Yeah. Do you not think that people look and see how the school system
Right.
will affect their children when
Right.
they're deciding whether or not they're going to move to Milford?
That's right. It's all interconnected, right? And the deeper I get into this work and the more nuanced you can really dive into, the more you see those connections between all the different pieces, right? Housing, economy, small business, job opportunities, education, healthcare, it's all connected. And climate action as well. In fact, just we're right now waiting for the final jacket to be signed. We've got a new clean energy siting and permitting bill. It's coming through, and it's going to get to the governor's desk. I'm thrilled to say. And also very, very proud as the chair of the the Senate chair of the Joint Committee on Environment and Natural Resources that I served as this term. That's the second term I've actually served in that capacity. I'm also the chief architect of the Plastics Reduction Act. Did you know, Al? This blows me away every time I say it. The plastics industry produces 4 times more harmful greenhouse gases every year than the airline industry. Isn't that wild? It's wild. I can see you think it's wild by the response on your face, but it's true. 4 times more, 4 times worse, right? Plastics than the airline industry.
Well,
So if we're serious about our climate action goals,
it's not just climate. It's you start hearing about microplastics and the effect on,
bingo, yes.
the little fishies that are
Uh-huh.
eaten by the bigger fishies.
You see that lid on your cup right there? That lid's going to be around for 200 years, right? That plastic lid right there.
I didn't think about that because they did away with the styrofoam cup.
Yeah, that was
To
a step in
paper.
the right direction. Polystyrene is terrible for our environment. But plastic starts polluting from literally the moment it starts to even get made, right? Because plastic is made from fossil fuels.
Well, any polyolefin, whether it's polypro or polyethylene,
Right, exactly.
is going to create issues.
Right. So if we want to be able to pass along a planet to our kids and grandkids and their kids to come, we got to get serious, real fast about reducing single-use plastics. And so the bill that I wrote, the Plastics Reduction Act, I wrote and filed with a colleague in the House and have been championing it all this, the whole session and even before, is the most comprehensive single-use plastics reduction legislation in the history of the state. And I was able to not just write it and research it and collaborate to get it done.
Rebecca, what does it do?
Great. We passed it
I
through
mean,
the Senate.
I love the idea that people talk about it. And
I'm going to tell you what it does. But I also want to tell you that we passed it on a sweeping bipartisan vote in the Senate of 38-2. Right? So it has a broad swell of support. So first thing is it would ban all plastic bags, single-use plastic bags in the state. Most people in the Commonwealth already have a plastic ban in place in their community. This would make it all the same.
But that seems
statewide.
easy. You just go to paper.
Yeah, you can go to paper.
Or go to reuse those.
Even better.
My trunk is full of those reusable Stop and Shop bags.
Even better would be reusable cloth bags. Those are the best for our environment. So that's the goal, right? So we take some real work to do on bags in the bill. We also address those lids and forks and knives and spoons and all that other food service ware that's made from plastic because, like you said, just that one fork, for example, or that lid sticks around for 200 years before it breaks down and it doesn't go away. It becomes, as you said before, microplastics and nanoplastics that not only enter the air and the soil and the water, but also wildlife, and it is even...
Then into me.
Exactly. In fact, you and I both sitting here right now, statistically speaking, have plastic in
Inside.
our bodies. In fact, when we debated the Plastics Reduction Act on the Senate floor, my junior legislative aides, also known as my children, came into the building, and we had been collecting plastic trash in my office for a little while, and my kids actually constructed like a kindergartner-sized plastic person, and they called him Plastic Pete, and I brought plastic entirely made out of plastic junk, and Plastic Pete came to the Senate floor with me that day.
But you would have thought, I mean, this was back decades ago when I was still young and Paul Revere was running around. But we talked about the best pesticide we knew was DDT.
Yep.
And DDE. It worked phenomenal because it stayed.
Yeah.
And then they traced it back from the insects to the fishies to the animal to the people.
Right.
Aren't we saying the same thing about microplastics?
Yes. And so bags, food service ware, wipes, right? Like diaper, baby wipes.
Those flushable wipes that aren't.
Exactly. The non-flushable wipes are made from, no surprise, plastic. And those are really making a mess.
We had our sewer department on, and they talked about there's no such thing as a flushable wipe.
It's a big, big problem, and so we took that problem and addressed it head on in the Plastics Reduction Act, and those are big steps forward. So unfortunately, the House didn't pick up that bill, but we've made a really significant set of strides on passing that legislation. So I look forward to,
But
refiling
how
that in
about
January.
the bottles?
The bottles, yeah.
I mean, you think about every time tomorrow or day after we'll go to a soccer field, and every kid's there, not every kid, but too many, with little plastic
The
bottles.
teeny tiny ones.
Yeah, the teeny tiny ones, or even
Yeah.
the big Gatorades or whatever.
Yep, we've got work to do there also.
And you sit there and say, all those go into the trash bins. But now the fallacy that they're being recycled.
That's
Is-
right.
It used to be that recycled made money for Milford.
Yeah, not true anymore. And in fact, less than 10% of our plastics actually get recycled.
And that's,
It's just kind of a big farce that
well, that
plastic
was
is
the
getting
minute
recycled.
China passed the 5% Purity Act, where they said, unless you're 95% pure, we're not taking your recycle.
Yeah, China is really not taking recyclables anymore from us, and that these
So
are
all-
all reasons
all
why
of a
not
sudden-
only do we need to have much better single-use plastic reduction, but we also have to have a better focus on how those bits of waste
Get treated.
are getting produced in the first place, right? What we really need to do is to not make any more of those plastic lids, right? Because the more we make, the more they're going to stick around, right? So,
And
plenty more work to
realistically,
do on that front as well.
When they say it's not possible to shift, you sit there and say, the styrofoam cup I used to use, all of a sudden one day I went to Dunkin' Donuts, I ordered my coffee, and it came out with this paper cup.
With a paper cup. Yep. Hey, look at that. Well, and that's also part of the key, right? Is that when we're crafting legislation, we need to be both aware of unintended consequences, right? You don't want to make a requirement that people can't actually satisfy, and so you also need to be aware of the market and the reality of products, for example, right? We can't get rid of something if we don't have a reasonable alternative.
But I like the option. I could have my reusable Dunkin' Donuts cup, although most of it's plastic.
Yeah, but
But
that's
at
always
least
reusable.
It's reusable. Or I could take a paper cup.
Yeah.
I still got my option of having my coffee.
Exactly. And that's the part you really care about, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, the other thing, too, is I have this dilemma that I got a blue recycle bin and a gray trash bin. And I take this and I say, do I want to do what's right for the environment and put it in the blue? Or what's right for Milford's budget and put it in the trash? Because the trash is a lot cheaper to get rid of than the recycle.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to have to think about that decision.
Yeah, and that's part of the work that we're doing is, an ongoing conversation with our municipal leaders and municipal staff, and also with our waste haulers and managers. And, there's a lot of interested parties, right? A lot of stakeholders in this conversation about how do we tackle this problem effectively, right? Without creating more headaches, right? We're trying to get rid of headaches, so we want to solve the problems, right? How do we solve the problems and provide real solutions?
Well, the good news
that are going to
is
make sense, right?
You're keeping it at the tip of the spear.
Right. Right.
You know,
and the
'cause
more we talk about it, the more likely it is
As
we'll
long
be
as
able
you
to take
keep
action.
it in the conversation, I mean, state government moves too slow, but maybe not. Because if they were moving too quickly, you could get unexpected consequences.
That's right. That's right. And I know it can be, like, sometimes it's slower than I want also. But, this term alone, for example, when I went back and looked at, sort of took stock of how the session went, I was able to advance 18 different pieces of legislation.
Really?
That's big. That's a big number, let alone all the funding. And so, that's on top of all of my, community engagements, right? Every month I put out a newsletter. It's called the Rausch Report. You can sign up for it on my website. And you can get it delivered right to your inbox every single month. You can also review all of our past issues right again on the website. And each month there's a little segment called Where's Becca? It's like a play on Where's Waldo, because I'm all over the place, going to different places, and you can see a highlight, sort of selected places where I've been in that particular month. And it's been a lot of places for a lot of different, communities, celebrations and events and Eagle Scout ceremonies and things like
Has
that.
there been any discussion on making your job full-time and accepting it?
For me, it is full-time.
But we don't pay you full-time.
That's true.
See, there's the fundamental problem I have is it's like our teachers, where certain people want to be teachers, but they can't afford to.
Yeah.
You sit there and say, okay, we're paying you on a part-time basis, a good part-time, but it's not the 150, 160,000 that congressional seats in Washington pay.
Oh, I think they get even more than that. Yeah.
But I'd love to make it so that it's 160, 200,000. Say, now I expect you to work because you're getting paid for 50 hours a week.
Well, Al, when you can make that happen, you let me know, my friend. But I do think it would drastically change the way that people consider running for office. Right? A big part of my work, we haven't even talked about it, but a big part of my work is on government transparency, accountability, and also election reform. Making sure that people can not only cast their ballots and vote, but also run for office. And, you know, if you're a candidate for federal office, for example, you can use your campaign dollars for childcare. Not true if you're running for state or local office. Even though a colleague of mine has been filing that bill in the Senate for many years now, the Senate has passed it several times, but it just still hasn't gotten over the finish line.
See, and that doesn't make any sense because you're being paid a third of what people in Washington are, but you have the same expense for daycare.
Yep.
So again, you're making it that much harder.
Right, and that is a real challenge for people like me, frankly, to figure out how to run for office. And some of us have been able to figure out how to make it work. Frankly, I couldn't have made it work if I had been the first time I was running for this seat back in 2017, 2018, if, my husband's job was stable, and I had been able to secure a part-time position and also run for office at the same time. And I pretty much took my entire paycheck as a part-time attorney, right? I'm a lawyer. As a part-time attorney working in the private sector, I took my whole paycheck and I gave it to the daycare. Pretty much. That's how
I
the
hate
dollars
to
worked
do
out.
this, but we've got a minute left.
Goes
Becca,
so fast.
I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
Because I continue to deliver real results that make a difference in your life, that make your life hopefully a little bit easier, a little bit smoother, a little bit more fair, and hopefully a little bit less expensive. And the proof is in the pudding, and I hope to continue delivering that service.
Well, thank you for little things like $7 million incremental school money and all the other little bits and pieces that make our life a little easier.
Absolutely.
And as always, I'll stick to my promise that I'll never ask you to vote for any specific candidate, but I'll beg you, become educated, learn about our candidates, and please get out and vote. Because there's nothing more important than choosing the person who you believe, whether I agree with you or not, but whether you vote or not, it's critical. So as always, thank you for everything you do. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
God bless, and may tomorrow be a better night than tonight.